It was the company's annual gala night, the kind of night where everything sparkled, from the diamond necklaces around the guests' necks to the champagne glasses reflecting the chandeliers. The city's elite gathered under one roof, celebrating yet another year of record-breaking profits. But amid the suits, silk gowns, and clinking glasses, a quiet figure mopped the marble floor near the grand piano, his eyes downcast, his movements deliberate, unseen, unappreciated, uninvited to the laughter that echoed across the hall. His name was Samuel. The janitor. Little did anyone know, that night, the janitor would silence the CEO, not with power, not with wealth, but with a song from the soul. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unseen talent, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this story with someone who still believes that miracles can come from the most unexpected places. Samuel had been working at the luxurious corporate tower for nearly a decade. Every morning, before sunrise, he would sweep the lobby, polish the brass doors, and scrub the glass walls until they shone like mirrors. To the executives, he was invisible, a background shadow who simply kept their empire clean. No one knew that before life had crushed his dreams, Samuel had once studied music at a conservatory. He used to play the piano at small cafes, weaving Chopin and Beethoven into melodies that made strangers weep. But tragedy struck when his wife, Amelia, fell ill. Medical bills swallowed everything. To pay for her treatments, he sold his piano, the last symbol of his dream, and took a janitor's job. Amelia never recovered. She passed away one quiet evening, holding Samuel's hand, whispering her last words through trembling lips, "Promise me, Sam, never stop playing." He promised, but the world had other plans. Since then, years had passed like a gray blur. His hands that once danced across ivory keys now scrubbed floors. His ears that once caught symphonies now heard only the hum of office lights. But deep inside, his heart still carried melodies, melodies he could no longer play. The company where Samuel worked was led by Victoria Crane, a woman known for her steel-like authority, diamond-cold confidence, and impossible standards. She was the kind of CEO whose every step demanded attention. Rumor had it, she fired a manager once because his tie was wrinkled at a board meeting. To everyone, she was flawless. Untouchable. But behind that polished facade, Victoria carried a wound of her own. When she was young, her father, a struggling pianist, used to play Chopin every night. The music filled their tiny apartment with beauty, warmth, and hope. But when he passed away suddenly, all those notes turned into silence. Since then, Victoria refused to listen to classical music. She said it distracted her from reality, from the cold truth that dreams didn't pay bills, discipline did. So, when she saw the janitor working near her grand piano that gala night, she raised a brow with visible disdain. "Careful," she said curtly. "That piano costs more than your yearly salary." Samuel nodded silently, eyes still on the floor. But there was something in the way he looked at that piano, something she noticed but couldn't quite understand. It was as if he was staring at a long-lost friend. Later that evening, when the event was in full swing, Victoria stood before her guests to announce the company's newest success. But the crowd had grown restless. The speeches, the charts, the numbers, everything felt the same as every other year. Then one board member jokingly said, "Victoria, you've conquered everything in business. What about in love? When will you find someone to match your fire?" The guests laughed. Victoria smirked. "When someone plays Chopin as beautifully as my father did," she said, half laughing, half melancholic. "Then maybe I'll consider marrying him." The room erupted in cheers and teasing applause. She didn't know that someone was listening, the janitor, standing quietly in the corner, holding a mop. When the crowd dispersed toward the buffet tables, a strange hush settled in. Then, faintly, a sound began to rise from the piano. Soft at first, trembling, like a whisper of something long buried. Then it grew fuller, deeper, wrapping the room in haunting beauty. It was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The notes shimmered like liquid gold, flowing through the air, pulling everyone's attention toward the stage. Conversations stopped. Laughter faded. Even the waiters stood frozen. The janitor's uniform looked out of place against the elegance of the room, but his fingers were poetry. Victoria turned slowly, disbelief written on her face. She recognized the piece instantly, her father's favorite. And as she watched, something inside her cracked open. Memories she had locked away came rushing back, her father's tired smile, the small piano by their window, the warmth of his hand as he guided hers across the keys. She could almost hear his voice, "Music isn't about perfection, my little Vicky. It's about truth." Tears welled in her eyes, unbidden. When the final note lingered in the air, silence enveloped the hall. And then, applause, thunderous, heartfelt applause, erupted from every corner. The guests stood on their feet, clapping, cheering, shouting for more. But Samuel stood quietly, eyes lowered, humble as ever. Victoria walked toward him, her heels echoing against the marble. She stopped in front of him, her voice trembling. "Where did you learn to play like that?" He looked up gently, his expression calm. "It's just something my wife taught me to never forget." The crowd fell silent again. The CEO, known for her composure, was speechless. Over the next few days, word spread through the company like wildfire. The janitor who played Chopin. People whispered about it in elevators, shared videos recorded that night, and suddenly, Samuel became an unexpected legend. But fame was never his intention. He returned to his usual work the next morning, polishing floors as if nothing had happened. Victoria, however, couldn't stop thinking about him. For the first time in years, she felt human. His music had reached something she thought had died long ago. The next evening, she came down to the lobby, where Samuel was mopping the tiles. "You played beautifully," she said quietly. "Would you teach me?" Samuel hesitated. "Teach you, ma'am?" "Yes," she said, a little softer. "Teach me how to feel that again." And so, in the quiet hours after office closing, the janitor and the CEO would sit side by side at the piano in the lobby. She struggled at first, her fingers stiff, her patience thinner than glass. But Samuel guided her gently, teaching not just notes, but emotion, how to let go, how to breathe through the melody. Slowly, the music began to heal them both. As weeks turned into months, something unspoken began to bloom. Not romance in its traditional form, but a deep, soulful connection born out of pain and shared humanity. Victoria found herself smiling more often, laughing softly at her mistakes, while Samuel's once-buried heart began to stir again. Then came the day that changed everything. The company announced a charity gala, a concert to raise funds for orphan children. Victoria insisted that instead of hiring an orchestra, she and Samuel would perform together. Her board protested, calling it unprofessional, but she silenced them with a look. That night, the grand hall was packed once again. But this time, the woman in the center wasn't the cold, distant CEO. She was someone reborn. As the lights dimmed, she turned to Samuel and whispered, "If you play Chopin tonight, I'll marry you." It was said as a jest, but her voice trembled with something real. Gratitude, admiration, something deeper she didn't yet understand. Samuel smiled faintly. "Then let's play our truth." And he began. The same nocturne filled the hall, but now, it was different. It wasn't sorrowful. It was alive, luminous, rising like sunlight after years of darkness. Victoria joined in halfway, her hands uncertain at first, then steady, guided by his quiet presence beside her. The music swelled, carrying every emotion, loss, love, redemption, and hope, until the entire hall seemed to breathe as one. When the last note faded, there wasn't a single dry eye in the room. The applause that followed wasn't just for the performance, it was for the story it told. Two souls, from opposite worlds, healing through something pure and beautiful. Victoria stood up and faced the crowd, her voice breaking. Sometimes, she said, we forget that the people we overlook might carry the greatest treasures within them. This man taught me more about life than any business ever could. She turned to Samuel, her eyes glistening. And yes, if you play Chopin again, I'll marry you. The audience laughed and cheered, but Samuel simply bowed his head and whispered, then I'll play, for the rest of my life. Months later, the company's grand lobby was different. The old janitor's closet now stood open, revealing a piano instead of mops. Every morning, before the office filled with noise, Samuel would play softly while employees entered, his melodies reminding everyone of the power of grace. Victoria often stood by the window, listening quietly, smiling to herself. The world called her the CEO who married the janitor, but to her, titles didn't matter. She had found peace, not in power, but in music, in humility, in love that didn't need words. And Samuel? He had finally kept his promise to Amelia. He never stopped playing. Only now, he played for two hearts instead of one. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. It helps us bring more real, emotional stories like this one to people who need hope in their lives. And before we end, tell us in the comments. Do you believe that music, or love, can heal what life breaks?